Hello, everyone. This is Alex Koloskov at 40G Live, and we have a special guest, commercial photographer from South California, Rob Andrew. Hi, Rob. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming. We're going to talk about business of photography, about technical part. Rob doing food photography, lifestyle, portraiture, and all kind of commercial photography. So I'm sure we have many interesting things to talk about. Guys, you have, as usual, on 40G Live, there is a chat under the video. So that's where you can ask questions. We will have about 15 minutes at the end of the interview where you can ask Rob questions directly, okay? Right now, I already have a list of questions that you submitted on 40G Facebook group, and we'll start from there. So, Rob, are you ready?
Yep, ready to go.
Okay, so the very first thing, as usually, how you got into commercial photography. Just your history, your story, basically, in, I don't know, in 3-5 minutes. This is very interesting for everyone, usually.
Sure. So I actually went to school for music, and I was always the guy designing things for my bands and doing the flyers, creating the logos. And I got into actually design first. And then I started doing websites. And from that, I actually had clients that needed product photos, sort of the chicken and the egg thing. Everybody wants a website, but nobody has content yet. So I started shooting products for these websites that I was working on. And then I just realized that photography was way more fun than coding websites. And so I pretty much, that took over my life, and I started doing product photography and then gradually expanded into doing portraits and stuff, and starting to advertise a little bit for it. And then I was into portraits for quite a while, and then I did weddings, families, a little bit of everything, and kind of circled back to products and food later on. So it sort of came from that. I never had, I've been basically freelancing since I was a kid because I taught music independently, and then I went into doing websites on my own, and then I started doing photography. So I never had a real job. I always kind of freelanced. So there wasn't a big transition where I had to like quit my job and, you know, make that big leap or anything, which made it a little easier for me, I have to admit.
Wow, this is awesome. I mean, not a real job. This is your real job. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
That's a bragging point for me. I like to say I never had a real job, but I don't know. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes not, because dealing with people in the corporate world, I don't always have the equipment to talk to them in their language. But on the other hand, I've also been independent businessman my whole life, so that makes the business side more natural for me too.
Right. Where did you learn all this, starting from, well, whatever you've been doing before even photography and photography itself? Did you go to any schools or yourself, or how did?
Mainly just a lot of books and asking people a lot of questions. I've been to a lot of just independent workshops, but no really super formal training or classes. I've had classes in Photoshop and stuff like that in college, but never really like a photography program per se. Just things like Photo-G and Kelby and all these other sites, and just School of Hard Knocks, a lot of trial and error.
So working without diploma doesn't bother you or your clients at all, right?
No.
Official diploma from
nobody ever asked for that. Like, they're not going to stop you in the middle of a shoot and say, "Hey, where's your paperwork?" It just doesn't doesn't happen.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Let's move to next one. So it's a part of this. How do you get your studio? You know, let me kind of rearrange it a little bit. So you start doing little by little for your website clients. How do you start charging them? Did you do any free work to get the client? Or because, you know, there is a topic like, hey, we shouldn't do any free stuff because we are professional. And there is another way to, you know, offer maybe some free things to get a client pay you later. How it was at the beginning? How did you charge? How did you get that money to, let's say, get a studio, because you have a studio now, right?
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, I guess like anyone, I charged way too little. I did charge from the beginning, but I didn't charge a premium. I just charged pretty low rate, and once I started getting pretty good, then I started asking other photographers, hey, what's your fee for this? And just mainly asking around and trying to set prices based on your skill level and things like that. In food photography, I did some free work, but I was pretty careful about it. I actually said, I'll come shoot these dishes for you, and you buy the ones you want. And they would buy the pictures that they thought they could use, and if there was a few that they didn't think they could use, they were taking a risk on me because I was new, not really any portfolio. So there is some risk for the client there. They're giving up some dishes, they're giving up some time, and they're hoping, if they don't see a body of work, they have to just kind of hope. So you kind of have to appreciate that and do something free, but you also have to be careful not to just throw them a bunch of stuff for free and then they might expect the same thing next time. So the key is, kind of build your portfolio, but also set something up to where you could make money off of it later down the road. And so that's what I did with a couple of restaurants, and luckily they did buy quite a few of the pictures, so it worked out.
I see. Very cool. Yeah, I heard that kind of thought about being confident at the price that you charge. If you think that you charge too low, it's not good. And if you think internally that you charge too high, for example, for your knowledge or whatever, it will be some kind of translated to your client anyway, and it's not going to work. So you need to be, I guess, when your confidence growing, when you start, let's say you start, you can charge very little because you're not really confident, you want to build portfolio. Then more confidence you have as a photographer, more price you should charge for this, right? Just naturally. I see. Okay. So next is, one of the questions is, what is your entrance level in terms of how much you charge to start talking to clients? I'm not sure if you want to talk about actual numbers, because I know this is kind of the business. And just maybe, what is your strategy? Let's kind of put it a different way. What is your strategy when you meet your client and when you start talking about money? At the beginning, or when you discuss everything and,
I try to get as much detail as I can before I give them a price. And I would say I try to really avoid, I love talking to people on the phone. I love verbal communication. I talk about this a little bit in my course because you can get a much better read on people and what they're trying to accomplish if you talk to them on the phone or you meet with them in person. Because emails can get really weird really fast. You just can't read the tone that someone's, So I really recommend speaking to them on the phone. And then, so I do that first and I try to get a sense of the whole job, but I don't give them a price on the phone. I go back to the computer and I think about it for a few hours or a day or whatever, and then I'll shoot them a price. So entry level, I mean, it's like you said, hard to put a number on it because we have different countries watching and things like that. But here in the States, I try to think about how much I need for the day to cover just the cost of doing business, and then how much, profit on top of that I need to actually eat. If I'm not eating, if I need to eat more than just to eat on the photo shoot, I need to actually eat later. So magazines in this part of the world start at like $500 to $1,500 for an assignment. A little restaurant may only have a few $100s, but I try to really figure out what their needs are. If they shoot me an email that says, "Hey Rob, we need to shoot 29 dishes in a half day for our restaurant," I might be thinking, "You're crazy. We can never shoot 29 dishes in a half day for less than $1,000 or whatever." So what I do is I just call them and talk to them and be honest and say, "Hey, this is how long it takes. It could take a half hour or an hour to get a good food shot. So let's slow down for a minute here. Let's see what you really need right here, and then we'll build an estimate, day by day." So really just getting as much detail as you can from your client, figuring out what they really, really need. And a lot of times it's narrowing it down because most of them come to you with a much longer list than is really possible. And then you have to kind of trim.
Right, I see. Thank you. And I think it's very good psychological moment when you kind of trying to get as much as possible from the client. You listen to them, you're asking questions. It gets them a feeling that you care about, delivering what they want, right?
Correct. Yeah. It also
Before any money, it's like you care about them, and I think this is really important.
Yeah, start the relationship right away so they know you really want to give them what they want, but you also want to, keep the cost.
Right.
You know.
About the course, I don't know, guys, do you know it or not, but Rob has created a course, food photography course, with tons of really awesome shots. It will be released in probably 10 days from now, maybe a little bit faster. And Rob, you talk about business side on that course as well, right? As far as I remember.
I do. It's pretty general, but I do talk about how to keep clients, ways of making people happy, and a little bit about just client relations and customer service type stuff.
Okay, so let's try to kind of squeeze question. Probably have covered it in the course, but there is a question for an interview. What is your marketing strategy for your business, photography business? What you can unveil right here?
Yeah, so I mean, I can unveil almost all of it because it's pretty simple. Maybe I should save some for the course, so there's something in there that you have to look at. But no, I mean, I do a pretty simple strategy. Coming from a web design and web development background, I've always done some SEO. My blog is pretty important, although it's pretty Spartan right now. I don't have a lot of posts on it. Blogging has been a big thing for me, and SEO, just having some visibility on Google. Sometimes that's spending my time creating content that I think will pop up well on Google, and sometimes it's actually spending a little money on Google AdWords or pay-per-click to get people to click through, because really everybody uses Google. And it can be a little confusing because we don't always know who to go after. Like, do we want to go after the creative agency or the design firm or the magazine editor or the restaurant owner, or what door to knock on? Is sometimes a little confusing. So Google, really, everybody uses Google, from art directors to magazine photo editors to people that own restaurants. I mean, literally everybody uses Google. So that is my first frontier, really, is some PPC, pay-per-click advertising on Google, and some just general blogging and refreshing my website often enough so that Google will see it.
Right. On Google, when you do it, do you do it locally? You can limit your advertising for a particular local audience. Do you try to?
Yeah, I try to keep it pretty local, because if you go too general, like if I put something like keyword food photographer, then we're getting a little weirdness. That was weird. If you just put a really general keyword like food photographer, then you're not going to necessarily find people in your area that want to hire you. You're going to be all over the US and all over the world. So I try to keep it pretty local in my area: San Diego food photographer, San Diego commercial photographer, things like that. And then I list also on Wonderful Machine, which is a little more nationwide. So on there, I know I can reach a little more of a regional or national audience. But on Google, I try to reach people in my own local area. Otherwise, I would spend a ton of money every month on AdWords.
Thank you. Did you try Facebook? Advertisement on Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook for food photography doesn't work too well, from my experience. But for portrait and wedding photography and things like that, it works excellent. I find just Facebook is more of it's more just to keep people aware of your work and just keeping yourself in their minds. So I do tend to get referrals from Facebook people who see my food every week or so. I try to post a couple images, or I use my page or my groups to post some images, and then people will say, oh, well, they're thinking I might need some food photographer for this project. Oh, they'll think of me because they just saw me post a picture of pasta the other day or something. But I found that Facebook was more conducive to like portrait, wedding, referrals from your friends to other friends who need a photographer. But for commercial photography, didn't work quite as well for me.
I see. So you didn't pay. You do just use organic, let's say, Facebook type of.
Right. I have more luck using the organic, the personal account and the organic reach than I do with boosting my posts on my business page, because even when I boost, I don't find that I'm really reaching the right audience for me. with a boosted post. But you really have to test these things. That's the idea, is really just test, because what doesn't work for me may well work for you. It's just test it out. You can spend $15, $20 boosting a post and just see if you get any action from it, because who knows, it may work better for you. You may write an ad a little better, or you may be better at targeting on Facebook than me. It just may be a better fit for you. So to test it out is pretty cheap. And I know you guys are spending $500 on a lens or $1,000 on a light. So make sure you also put aside that $40 to try Facebook advertising. Just give it a shot and see if it works.
Right. Very cool advice. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, in general, I can add just from myself what I see, what I read, that right now advertisement, as it was for many years, paid advertisement online, the effectiveness gets lower, and lower, actually. Basically, the cost of advertisement, cost of getting the client gets higher. And what's really growing is the real networking. Well, it was always, we always trust more our friends than any pop-up or suggested post from Facebook, right? So yeah. I think this is the right strategy, is to just grow your audience naturally. People will just say, hey, I saw this guy, he has beautiful photos, food photos. So that's right?
I think there's nothing more powerful than a referral. When someone says, we like Rob, and then their friend, even if they don't know them that well, they might say, oh, well, Sheila likes Rob, so we're going to like Rob too. And same thing with online reviews. If you can get some people to leave good, positive online reviews for you, those are really powerful too, because they have that endorsement built into them. Like,
right,
this guy thought he was good, so, and he seems happy, so I'll hire him. Right. And just looking at your portfolio, there's still some risk there. Even if you have a great portfolio, they're still taking a chance on you. So
yeah. The best thing that when referral, it's basically advertisement from people who has no interest in that advertisement. They didn't pay. I mean, they didn't care, right? They just expressing their opinion, so that's why people believe it. Because okay, cool. Let's move to next one. There is a question. Probably you already talked about this. How and where do you find clients that have a reasonable budget for your service? We talked about this probably, right? Reasonable budget. So how do you have anything to say about this?
Well, I mean, I think built into that question, it's kind of the answer already. Like, if you're trying to think who has a reasonable budget for food photography, right? So it's probably not the little diner down the street. It's going to be someone who has multiple restaurants, 2 or 3 locations, or maybe a photo editor at a magazine. Maybe you're not ready for Food and Wine magazine yet, but maybe it's like the local food magazine. There's like 4 or 5 here in town. We have small magazines, Dining Out San Diego, and littler magazines that have a reasonable budget. They don't have a huge budget, but they have a reasonable budget, and you can start at those levels. They have money to spend on food photography. It may not be hundreds of thousands, but it's something to get you started and earn a living while you build your portfolio. So you just kind of have to ask yourself who you think the clients are. It's not going to be a food blogger. Probably it's not going to be a really small restaurant. It's going to be ones that have a little more established.
Right. Rob, let me ask you this: did you ever try to walk in to the local restaurant and talk to somebody and try to offer your service as food photographer? Or
yeah, I did, and I didn't have a lot of luck there. Actually, though, what we did is I had an intern, one of the local colleges I had an intern from for a while, and she was working for me just for college credit. And I had her send out postcards. And this was before I had any really portfolio. I just had a few images. So what we did is we put 2 images, one on each side, because that's all you really need for a postcard. And we sent that out to about 25 restaurants, local restaurants. And I got a couple of calls back from that. And they weren't big money jobs, but I was able to build some portfolio as well as make some money. So that's one thing you can do, is just target local restaurants in your area. Postcard marketing is a good way to go, but you should probably follow up with a phone call and say, hey, did you get my postcard? because sometimes, as I mentioned in the course too, sometimes you're barking up the wrong tree. Like the person that owns a restaurant may not do any of that. They may have a marketing person or a PR rep or someone else that handles all that sort of thing. So the person that you send the postcard to may not be able to hire you. You may have to call and say, hey, did you get my postcard? By the way, am I talking to the right person, or do you have a marketing person? But I did that. That was, you know, when you consider about 25 to 30 restaurants that I got a couple calls back, it's actually a pretty good conversion rate. Considering, you know, on a percentage basis, considering 25 cards, you know, cost me very little. And then there was a couple restaurants that I went into that I just knew the people because I ate there a lot. So I'd go in and they already knew my face and I'd offer them services. And one of those actually did end up buying some pictures as well. So if they know your face, if the owner knows you, that's always good. If you're going to send out random postcards and stuff like that, I definitely recommend following up with a phone call so that, you know, they don't just throw it in the trash.
Right.
Okay. Or if they do, maybe they at least remember throwing it in the trash. And you can say, hey, dig that out because I really want to shoot for you.
Yeah. Oh, did you put it in the trash? Okay, I'm going to send a new one next month.
Nearby, or is it?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rob. A quick question before we jump to next section of interview where we'll talk about some technical part of photography. What about Instagram? This is from chat, from Rachel. Marketing on Instagram. Did you try this?
Instagram again is not, I mean, it's very good and I use it a lot, but the thing with Instagram is it's not a place where you necessarily are going to make conversions, like people are going to just hire you right from Instagram or send you an IM and just hire you from there. It's more of an awareness type of deal. So on Instagram, you're keeping your presence and you're really not marketing on Instagram. What you're doing is branding. So you're showing people that you exist and you're reminding them that you exist. But then you need to hit them again with something else. And that's like an ad or PPC or a postcard or something else where they actually can click, you know, easily to your website. But Instagram is great to create awareness. And I've had a lot of clients say they look at your Instagram. They really do look at it as a portfolio. And some of them that's easier for them than going to your website because they already have Instagram right here, right? As opposed to I have to go to your website, click on something, and then navigate through. And I also think clients like to stalk you a little bit. They like to have a personal, they don't want to know just are your pictures good, but they also want to know a little bit about who you are. So Instagram's great for that because they feel like they can look at your pictures, but they can also get a little personality read on you, like figure out if you're going to be fun to hang out with or whatever. So it's great for creating awareness. I recommend mixing in some personal stuff on there, but it's not advertising in and of itself. You really need to hit them another way to get them to go to your website and actually hire you.
Right. So it's not a direct way, but it's more indirect way. It's like when few things get intersected and hey, this guy, oh, this is the same guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. People need to make a connection and
right.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. So to finalize that question about marketing, social media, because there are so many things, you know, Google+, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, what do you use to build your presence on social media? What is it? Instagram, Facebook, I know. What else? Do you use Google+, Twitter?
Google+
is regular. I would say regularly.
Regularly, I prefer the Facebook personal side because the organic reach is so low now with Facebook business pages. I mean, you know how it is. If you don't boost your post, then it's like lost, and you reach 30 people out of your 1,500. So I built this following on Facebook, and then now it's like really hard to reach all those people unless I pay. So Instagram to me reaches more people, and so I mainly stick with Instagram, and then I use Twitter here and there, but mostly I just duplicate my Instagram posts to Twitter because Twitter is similar in terms of the hashtag thing and all that, and I don't type a lot of text into Instagram already anyway, so that 140 character limit there's a good, if you have enough time to do both Twitter and Instagram separately, you absolutely should. But usually I duplicate my Instagram to my Twitter, and I find that it's pretty close in terms of the type of content you would post. Across those two is good, and the engagement level is pretty good. And also don't forget that you could pay a little extra on both of those too. Even though the organic reach on Instagram and Twitter is pretty solid, you still can pay a little. If you don't have the Instagram following yet, you still can pay a little bit. But the main thing is to be very active and keep your postings regular, and you'll build I think it's pretty easy to build a following on Instagram and Twitter.
Okay, thank you. Next part is the technical, because we have some questions about, lights and stuff like this. So if you have only one light, how you would light the food? That kind of little bit strange question. How you would use that light that you have? And let's add what light it would be if you can use only one type of light. What type of light modifier would you put, and where do you put it?
I guess if it's only one, if you only have one, if you're only going to own one light, I would probably go with like a large softbox or an octabank, because you can always make that look smaller than it is in some way. You can tape part of it off, you can cover part of it, flag it. There's ways of shrinking it to make it look like a smaller light source. But if you have only one small light source, it's hard to make that look like a big soft light source, right? So if I only had one, it'd probably be like an octabank. And if you want it to read a little harsher, you can always pull the diffusion material out or do something to harden it up a little bit. And you'll see a lot of times in food photography, you'll see the light coming from behind the food, which is usually what I do. I'll put the light source behind the food, maybe 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock, towards the camera. And then I'll use a reflector in the front to bounce some light back in. And you're going to see, if you watch my course, you're going to see window light is a little harsher than you think. It's harsher than the octabank in a way, because the sun is out there and it's coming through a less diffusion material, and the octabank sometimes looks almost too soft. But I mean, I guess you just have to, what I'm trying to say is it's different for every dish, but I usually come from behind the food and a little off to the side toward the camera at a slight angle, and then I'm here with reflectors, usually foam core or some silver card that I just hand hold.
Excellent.
And usually I only use one light source, so that's actually, throughout my video you'll see mainly one light source, a window or softbox, and some reflectors, of course.
I got it. Thank you. So the follow-up question, is it better to use natural light or studio lights? Or do you combine them? This is kind of additional question. Do you combine both when you shoot on location, let's say?
I like to mix them. I wouldn't say one is necessarily better. They're just different. If you learn on studio lighting, like I learned, my first jobs were product photography jobs, so I learned on studio lighting, which forces you to learn lighting, because you have to place every light to make it do what you want. You have to put it there. Whereas if you're learning food photography and you're learning with natural light, it's different at every photo shoot, right? Whether it's a window or not, the sun may be directly coming through, or maybe more diffuse, or maybe it's a bigger window, smaller window. Whereas if you're learning with strobes, you have your kit, whatever modifiers you have to learn how to place those exactly where you want them to make that thing happen. And then when you go into a natural light situation, you know what to look for. Like, oh, that looks kind of like my softbox, so I'm going to place that there. That's my window. And then I'm going to use this natural light over here reflected. So if you learn strobes, then it'll help you read the natural light better. But that's not to say if you know natural light really well, you can start to envision what the strobe would be. If you have a 4-foot window, that's similar to a 4-foot softbox. So you really need to learn both, because sometimes restaurants are dark. Sometimes it's, you have to go there after hours. So you really have to kind of know both. But in the interest of time and shooting faster and all that, I like to use natural light whenever I can, because it's just a tripod and me and a shutter release and maybe a reflector. And if I want to move to a different part of the restaurant, for example, then all I have to do is move my tripod and me. I don't have to move, you know, 3 stands or something.
Right.
So that's a factor as well, depending on your time constraints and if you think you'll be moving around.
I see. Thank you. Yeah, I myself, I know, I always try not to use a natural light just because I want to control it, you know, all the lighting completely, and there is no dimmer on the window, so I was like always choosing the you know, studio without window if possible. But I see what you're saying. It's very interesting because in the restaurant it's different. It's a completely different situation. Big windows, too much light, maybe. Awesome. Question on the chat about food stylist. Is it a real need to have a stylist for the food? From Rolando. So about styling, do you style food yourself? Do you ask a client? Do you hire food stylist? And is it really necessary to have food stylist?
Well, it's not always necessary. In fact, a lot of the work in my portfolio is just me styling the food. I have probably on my website like a handful of the pictures, maybe like 30% are with a food stylist, and the other 70% is just me. So it really depends on the food too. Certain things are more difficult to style, like eggs and meat, and you know, certain types of food don't hold up as well over time. If you're doing burgers and steaks and stuff like that, it's good to have a stylist. Less complicated food like salads or pastries or desserts, they might not require as much styling. So it kind of depends on the job and what you're shooting. Magazine budgets don't always have a food stylist, don't always have room for a food stylist. It's just like they want a picture of how the dish really looks when you go into the restaurant. So they're not necessarily wanting you to enhance anything. They just want you to go in, be fairly quick, in and out in a couple of hours. And so with the food stylist, you're going to spend a lot more time on each plate. Typical day with a food stylist is going to be like an hour to an hour and a half per dish. So by the time they make a stand-in, and then, you know, you shoot it and get everything set up, and then they bring in like the hero dish, and the food stylist works on it and gets it all perfect and looks at it with you and stuff, then it could take a long time. It could take all day to shoot 7 or 8 plates. And so not all clients want that. They don't want to spend necessarily a whole day's budget on 7, 8 plates. They want to have a lot more photos. So it really just depends on the client. But it is great to have one. I mean, it makes your life a lot easier. You don't have to worry about things falling apart. And it's always good to have a second set of eyes, even if you don't have a stylist. You know, if you have an assistant or a friend to help you watch and say, hey, are you sure you want to shoot that tomato like that or whatever? It's just really good to have a second pair of eyes. But I self-style a lot of stuff. And what it comes down to is just, a lot of it just comes down to arranging stuff in a nice way. It's not necessarily all the tricks that a food stylist does. The things we read about, like fake ice cream and glycerin drops and you know, all these cool tricks that they have, that's not really the major thing in real life that we do. The major thing is just arranging everything in a nice, pleasing, geometric sort of way. And if you can do that and practice that, then you'll have most of it down. And you'll just need a food stylist for the more difficult jobs where you have stuff that's going to melt.
Right, and do you need to educate your clients? Because as I understand, at least in my experience, more more challenging, more critical food photography shots may require stylists much more than less kind of critical. I remember that times when client said to me, no, we don't need food stylists. Our chief is great. He'll do beautiful dishes for you. Just come and shoot. I came, they brought dishes, and I started understanding that we have a completely different meaning of great dish, you know. So, and it was too late to bring a stylist. And I did myself, for example, as much as I could, but I knew that it would be much better than we would have professionals. So did you have anything like this? I mean, when did you really push client to hire a stylist, to pay for stylist?
Well, there's sort of 3 levels, right? There's like the smaller ones who just absolutely don't have the budget for it. Like it's going to add $700 or $800 a day, and you kind of know right away that it's just not going to happen. and so I won't even pitch it to them. And then you have a decision. You have the clients way up here who know about a food stylist and understand it and will gladly hire one. And then you have the ones in the middle, and the ones in the middle are the ones you have to teach a little bit that it's not about making the photos look fake or posy or anything like that. We're really just trying to hire a food stylist so that we can make the food look as good as it does in real life, but for the camera. And so that's the critical thing to get across to people is we're not trying to sidestep your chef or say that your chef isn't good enough, but the camera sees it different than you see it. And so when the chef puts it on a plate, it might look awesome to him, but maybe not so much to the camera. So it's just, it's educating your clients and just letting them know that it's going to come out a lot better. And particularly I try to do it when I know they have, like I said, a lot of meat or a lot of ice cream or anything that I know is going to be really difficult to preserve on set. Then that'll be the time to tell them about it. But you have to, again, I'd call them on the phone. Don't try to convey it in an email. that gets scary, and it's so easy for someone to type back, forget that, we don't need that. Talk to them on the phone and just let them know, hey, I know your chef's great and the stuff, looks good when I go in there to eat or whatever, but what a food stylist does is a little different than what a chef does, and this is why we do it. And there may be some cases where you don't even need to necessarily tell them it's a food stylist. You could sell this as your crew, just part of your crew or assistant. And that sounds crazy, but as long as you let them know how much time it takes, you could just go in and say, my crew will be there at 4 o'clock, and just put it all in one fee, because they won't understand the food stylist line in their invoice, but they may have plenty of budget to pay you and your assistant. It's just a lot of times the perception of how you sell it to them. So in some cases, you may be able to get a food stylist in there in a stealthy way too.
That's interesting trick. Yeah, cool. Alex is saying that one of our viewers now that he needs a stylist usually for advertisement shot, not for editorials. Right. So it's more like advertisement is more critical on everything, and it usually paid much better than editorial, right?
The budget's already higher, and then if you're working with an agency or an advertising agency or a creative director, they usually know about food stylists anyway, and they'll already understand, so you won't have to sell it to them as hard. The ones that are sort of in between, they don't have an agency yet, but maybe they have a chain of restaurants, and they don't understand it yet. They want to elevate their game, they want to have better photos, but they've never done it before, so they don't really understand. So they're in limbo. They're between the editorial job and the mom and pop restaurant and the big agency. They're right in here in the middle, and those are the ones that are a little trickier to sell it to.
Right. It's more like you need to educate them at some point. Educate your client that, hey, there is not just a photographer who click. There are other stuff may be involved. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rob. Let's talk about kind of more emotional and I know stuff like the question is, what is the most valuable lesson you have learned on your failures? So let's talk about experience, failures, and trial and error, and how you use your errors, and probably maybe you have some story of how it was most valuable for you, or maybe most painful, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of pain. So
let's bring some stories.
There's always a lot of pain. No, usually, almost any problem that you have in photography, any client problem or customer service problem that you have in photography, always comes down to communication. So if anything breaks down in the whole chain, you can almost always trace it back to communication, right? Like I tell my photography students, I tell them, if you have a blurry picture, you can always trace that back to your shutter speed or your focus, right? There's only two things that cause blurry pictures. In customer service, there's only one thing really, and that's communication. So either you didn't break down like how much you didn't really figure in these extra costs or whatever, and you underquote. Then it ends up being so much work. I had a client a couple years ago when I first got my studio. I was eager to have regular clients. I really was chasing people who were going to bring me stuff every week, every month, because I wanted to make sure that I could pay the rent. And that's the scary thing about having your own studio, of course, is like, is this really going to work out? Is business going to stay where it is now enough to where I can pay my rent? So I was so eager to get a client right away. I got this product client. I didn't really size up all their stuff. And so some of the stuff was like, I had to photograph like a hammer, which was no problem. But then I had to photograph a 6 foot wide stainless steel chest, and I was charging like the same price for this huge thing. And it was ridiculous. It was unsustainable for me. And of course the client gets disappointed because you have to suddenly, either quit or raise your price so much. So a lot of it just comes back to getting all the details from your client, just letting them know, this is what I can do. This item costs more because it takes longer, and just communication type stuff. It always comes back to communication.
Agree, completely agree. Yeah, it's kind of looking back to history of my own failures. Exactly, communication. Yeah, and it's like sometimes you even afraid a little bit to ask, because you're gonna think maybe I will lose it, because the answer maybe that's scary that you may lose the client, and then boom, you kind of getting it worse when you realize that.
Right, and then there's also a fear that you'll especially when you're beginning, you might be scared to charge enough, and because you might lose the job. So the thing is, don't fear that rejection. Just charge how long it's really going to take you, and how much you really think it's worth. Make sure that don't worry about losing some jobs. There's gonna be plenty of customers that don't fit or that can't afford you, and that's perfectly okay. So mostly the jobs that I've had a bad experience with are jobs that I probably should have turned down to begin with, or I probably should have got a lot more details from the client, just communicated a lot more of the details from the start. So
yeah,
those are very easy to prevent. And then I'm in like these forums, these photography forums. There's one specifically for San Diego that I'm in, and it's a group, where people ask questions all the time. And the levels are sort of, there's some really top pros in there, and there's also a lot of beginners in there, and they ask questions, just like in the Photogy, in the Facebook group. And almost every question is like, how do I deal with this client, et cetera, et cetera. And it always comes back to, well, you should put that in your contract. That's the answer. Like 99.99% of the time is that should be, worked out ahead of time, communicated to your client, and already in your contract before you start the work. And then this never would have happened. So getting all those details right in the beginning, as we talked about earlier too, is really paramount.
Right. Alrighty. So we get in to the part with questions and answers. So guys, I know will be a little bit delay, but if you have questions for Rob, post it now on our chat. Okay, I'm gonna read them, and we'll talk about it. Let me see. Maybe I already have some time. Silly question. We got some silly question from food lovers. Would you use an iPhone to shoot for social media for a client? So what about iPhone?
No, I just can't. You know why I wouldn't use an iPhone is because I like shallow depth of field, and I can't get it with an iPhone. It's so hard to get it really shallow. No, but I mean, it's so easy now. I use iFi card in my Canon, and that goes straight to my iPad. So even for social media, I can send a picture straight from my 5D to my iPad, or I have an X100S too that has iFi, and that'll go straight to my iPad or even to my phone. So for anything where I want a good photo, I like having a wide aperture lens, and no. I wouldn't do that.
And the question is, why client needs you if they have a phone themselves? It's like, and it's like, yeah, I agree. Interesting thing about depth of field and on food photography, how shallow it should be. I remember my first attempt to shoot food a long time ago. I was kind of working on the composition here and there, and it kind of was not looking right. And I remember I was shooting somewhere like f7 or something, not really close, but and when I changed it to f2.8, that lens had that number, and boom, that's where I was like, it was not, I mean, it was far from being cool, but it changed dramatically. So shallow depth of field is probably a really cool thing for food photography, right? For that impact when you separate foreground and background.
Yeah,
would you agree on what's your...
I like the telephoto look too, so I generally am always like 70 to 100 millimeters. So
Yeah.
iPhone's sort of stuck at 35 all the time or something. Oh, I noticed someone has said they have trouble with iFi. And there's an UGH, there's a UGH in that. so the iFi, I go over this in the video too, but if you try the Shutter Snitch app for iPad or iPhone, it's a lot more reliable than the iFi app. And then I use that X Pro card, the iFi X Pro card. You might want to take a look at that. But there's also a way in the iFi settings in the USB settings to keep it always on, so it never disconnects. It uses more battery power, but there's a way to set it on the X Pro card too. So if you need tips on that, you can reach out to me.
Okay.
And I can tell you my setup, because it used to be horrible for me too, but now my iFi setup is super reliable.
Cool. I can tell guys that on 40G, on every course, it's not just a course that you buy, you download and forget. We always have a group, special group inside 40G where instructor is kind of answering the questions, and own forum, kind of closed forum. So if you want to work with Rob more and kind of get more knowledge, more than he have in the course, he has in the course, again, make sure that you will have it once you join the course. You can ask, you can communicate with photographer, you can post your shots for the review. Rob will take a look at them at, I don't know, once per week, per month, depend how many you got. So it's interactive, okay? Just kind of, don't forget about this. Okay, we have questions coming. Let me start reading. iPhone, we answered. Okay, hey Rob, how would you define your style, and what does an image need to end up in your portfolio?
The food just has to look really good. So if the food looks yummy, that's all. I'm not super picky about lighting and all that like I used to be. Just the main thing is that the food makes you want to eat it, because that's all clients care about. Client never cares about whether you use a strip box or an octabox or side light or rim light or whatever. They only care about what the result is and whether it makes the food look delicious. So for me, it just has to be clean, no distractions or anything, and everything has to look fresh and not necessarily even styled perfectly. It just has to look like it's fresh and very edible. And you'll see it when I do the retouching in my videos too. You'll see the retouching is all geared towards just making the food look fresher and more, nothing sagging, nothing looks oily, stuff like that. It just looks fresh and like you want to eat it.
Basically, it's a style in Photoshop, right? Whatever was not done in real shot, food styling, you can kind of fix it in Photoshop, same as everywhere, actually. Yeah. Okay, question from Dave Nietzsche, one of our instructors. What about light modifiers, and what kind of softboxes and sizes do you use? You probably answered about this in terms of if it would be one, it would be octabox. What do you usually bring on your location? What size of softboxes do you have?
Well, large? I have a 4-footer, and that's fairly large for food, because when you think about a plate of food, the box is bigger than the table. So for me, that's big enough, but it's not so big that it's crazy in a restaurant. So because I go out to restaurants a lot, I don't want to bring something that's so crazy that it's going to be, banging against walls and everything. So I'll bring the 4-foot softbox. I usually bring a shoot-through umbrella, which is pretty cool too, because shoot-through umbrella is harsh. It's more harsh than a softbox, I think. And sometimes you want a little more edgy quality to the light. So shoot-through from behind is sometimes good. But I change it up a lot. I go back and forth with these things a lot. I'd say if you have a good-sized softbox, it'll be really similar to window light. And window light is great for food. People use window light a lot. That's a great tool to have. A shoot-through umbrella is a great tool to have because it's dirt cheap and you can just throw it in your bag and forget about it. Usually there's always a shoot-through umbrella, and we have 3 cars, and there's a shoot-through umbrella in every car because if I forget, there's always a shoot-through umbrella at least, and I can put a speed light in there. Mm-hmm. And then actually hard, just bare light can look really good on food too, just reflectors or grids. So it's good to have, if you have Einsteins, for example, like the ones behind you, you can just have like an 8-inch reflector with a grid in there for just putting those hard highlights here and there. And those are great to have too. But food is, the lighting is actually fairly simple. There's not one thing, like if you're doing wine bottles or something, you really have to have a certain type of strip box and some diffusion material and all that. But for food, you can do a number of different things successfully. So softbox, window light, shoot-through umbrella, those are my go-tos. And then some just bare lights, usually bare speed lights or grids.
Right, and probably tape and some screens, right, to modify it on the fly if needed.
Yes, exactly. Cinefoil is your friend and gaff tape is your friend as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, let's see another questions. For shallow depths of field, Bob is asking, do you use continuous lights more than strobes? That's a little bit strange. I think it doesn't matter, right? Shallow depths of field, continuous light or strobes.
No, it's kind of the same.
That's, light is light, it doesn't matter. Let's jump to the next one. Do you spend a lot of time in the post-treatment, post-production? So how much, it probably depends from the shot. What is your answer? Short answer. How much time do you spend in post-production?
Yeah, it just depends on the client. Like some of it is, if it's more commercial and you're doing it for their website or their advertising, and then it has to be a little more perfect. So I'll spend anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour on each picture. Or I might even hire a retoucher. I have a professional retoucher. She's actually not too far from me. She's up in LA, that's where all the retouchers live. So she helps me out when I have budgeted a certain amount per image to send them off. I prefer to send them off. But for magazine work, I hardly do anything. I just mainly color correct in Capture One. I'll do contrast, exposure, color. I might do some spot healing just to remove little spots or crumbs, and that's about it. And yeah, but it really depends who your client is. If your client is Kraft macaroni and cheese, you're going to spend a lot more time retouching every single little detail. And if your client is editorial, the pictures don't have to be perfect. They just have a story.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Interesting question, I think interesting from Jonathan. Have you ever had a situation where working for a certain client jeopardized working for other clients? For example, working on for a fast food client, stop a high-end restaurants to hire you. Basically, can you spoil, I mean, working with a cheap client, maybe spoiling something else, or did it ever happen to you? Anything like this?
No, that never really happened to me. I'd say, as long as you're showing good images in your portfolio, the steakhouse doesn't care if you're shooting for McDonald's on the side. If it's a direct competitor, that might hurt you because, I don't know if I can compare, but like Rubio's, if you're the main campaign photographer for Rubio's, maybe Chipotle doesn't want to hire you and have the same look. But if you're at the point where Rubio's is hiring you and Chipotle wants to hire you too, then you probably don't have to worry that much.
Yeah, it's a really good situation. Yeah, I think it's all about the quality of the images. It's not about brand, because sometimes you can shoot something very cheap and simple, but the way that it's like wow, and well, it's good. It's okay. Agree. Thank you, Rob. Are there any food clients you wouldn't work without of principles? No, I'm not sure. Wouldn't work without of principles. Food clients. Let's jump to the next one. Sorry, Jonathan, I did not get in it right. What?
I think what they mean is, would I be morally opposed to working for certain companies where I'm against their practices of how they make?
Oh, food clients. Okay. So you read this question. Okay, so
I haven't run into that yet, but out here we have there's certain places that I probably wouldn't want to work for, but out here right now we have a trend, especially in California, we have this trend towards like natural, probably up north especially too, we have this trend towards natural, rustic, local, farm to table, and that's mainly what I'm dealing with day to day. And I'm not strictly a vegan or anything like that, so I wouldn't. There's nothing that's made me shudder so far. It may happen at some point, but it's no, I haven't been morally deterred from shooting anything yet.
Yeah, it's very Californian questions, I would say.
Maybe it's where I am that I haven't run into anything else.
Yeah. Okay. Have you tried LED lights? Is it good for food shot? What about continuous LED lighting?
I do have. I didn't show these in the course, but I do have some LED video lights that are about this big, and they're daylight balanced. You can buy them on Amazon. They're like $50 or less. They take 4 AA batteries, and I do use those sometimes because I'll mix them with daylight. So if I have good daylight, but it just doesn't have enough pop or a little extra something, I'll just put that little video light in there. Sometimes I even hold it with my hand while my camera's on a tripod. I'll just hold the video light up here. And what that does, I'm looking at my screen to make sure both my hands are in there. So I'll just hold it like this just to get a little kick or a little extra edge light to light the edges of things. And it's cheap and it runs on batteries. So it is kind of a handy tool. I don't use it a lot, but I usually have it in my bag.
And it's daylight balanced, right? So you didn't need to adjust color temperature with it. It works fine for you.
Right, and I never use it by itself. I always mix it with daylight just to add a little extra something every now and then. But you can do that with a speed light too. You can do the same thing with a handheld speed light because it's daylight.
Right.
More or less.
Yeah, I can add. I had some experience with LED lights as a video light. Actually, right now they kind of running. And guys, look at the color temperature, especially if you kind of buy non-expensive lights, because so many on eBay or everywhere. Sometimes there is like they're a little bit bluish, basically. So it's like 6,000 K, and some of them 5,500 K, and they're a little bit yellowish. And if you start combining them either on shot or on a video, it doesn't matter. It will look weird because some part will be bluish, some part will be a little bit yellowish. So make sure that the light is all the same color temperature. Better for the same brand and same.
And these have a little gel. The ones that I have, they're, like I said, from Amazon, they have a little gel slot too. And they come with, I think they come with like 3 or 4 gels so you could warm them up. So that's handy.
Okay. So let's see, what else do we have here? Which is the worst food to shoot? I would say the most complicated food to shoot, or worse. Ice cream? I don't know what.
Oh yeah, ice cream because it melts really fast, it gets away from you, and then for some reason that chocolate cake is always my nemesis because they always bring you, like, everybody has a lava cake on the menu right now. I don't know what this is. It's some kind of epidemic that everybody has to have a lava cake, chocolate lava cake, but it's really dark, and then they put white ice cream. So a lot of times I have to bracket and take multiple exposures to get the white cream and the super dark chocolate cake. And the trend too right now is dark chocolate everything. Like everything's 99% cocoa or something. So that's also, everything's super, super, super dark, like almost black. And you have to put more light on the front of it rather than my usual technique of lighting from behind. I have to put more light in the front and then multiple exposures. So I don't know, chocolate cake, it gets on my nerves. I can't think of anything else that really would be in the way. The thing that's tricky is if they bring it on a vessel, that's really difficult to shoot. Like I've had some chefs bring out, you'll see in my course I have a slate plate, and the slate gray, dark gray slate plates are kind of trendy right now, and they're matte and they're dark gray, so they soak up all the light. Whereas where you're using a white plate, it kind of creates a nice little bounce upward for you, and it's working for you, whereas slate plate kind of works against you. So some of it's the glassware that they choose, or they choose, really shiny reflective stuff. So not so much the food, but the setting sometimes.
Okay, thank you. Question about course when it's available. I can answer it. It will be available beginning of next week, so it's really, really close. probably last question for now is, if you don't get a job you have quoted on, do you follow up to get feedback why they didn't choose you? So if it's a rejection, do you do anything after that?
Yeah, definitely try to find out. If you don't get a job, I usually send an email to the art person or whoever inquired and say, just curious, you guys probably found someone else by now, but just curious, was it price? Was it creative decision? Was it, what was it exactly? Just so I can improve my service in the future. Can you let me know? And a lot of them will let you know. So it's handy to at least find out. And the ones that don't tell you, you just have to stress out over that for a while. It can be stressful because you're waiting for them to get back to you, waiting. Sometimes it never happens, or sometimes it's negative. So, but I would definitely say try to find out, because it's going to give you, it might be the keys to the castle for your next job.
Right. It's all, how they said, it's always better to ask than not to ask.
Yeah.
Anyway, on anything.
Yeah, on anything. It's better to ask questions and ask other photographers too, what they put in their estimate and all that, and they'll be hopefully forthcoming with it. I try to be as forthcoming as possible when people ask me questions about that kind of thing. A lot of times when I ask, the answer is such and such photographer had more of that in their portfolio. So they weren't just looking for a food photographer, they were looking for like a chocolate cake photographer. And I didn't have a lot of chocolate cakes in my portfolio. I had mostly whatever, pasta or fish. So they chose a guy who had 6 chocolate cakes in his portfolio. Because clients, they're taking a risk on us. So they want that guarantee that this guy really knows how to shoot a friggin' chocolate cake. And this guy, maybe he does and maybe he doesn't. So a lot of times it's just, they want something very, very laser specific in their portfolio. I've got a job later this week for, it's one of my biggest jobs that I've booked so far. And it's because I had food and lifestyle combined, and then they also saw that I had a hidden product gallery because they're wanting to do some product and some portrait, which is very similar to the portraiture I do, and then some food. So it's like the exact combination that I have. And so that's why they weren't even really looking for anybody else. It was just like a lock for me.
Wow.
So just how much you match.
Rob, you said hidden product portfolio. That's really, you don't have product portfolio in your, let's dig it. Why you hide it? What's going on?
Well, I have, on my website, I already have enough stuff. I have food, I have portraits, and I have lifestyle. And the portraits a lot of times are like chef portraits that can kind of go together. Mm-hmm. But I felt like I didn't really want to have 4 specialties. Like 3 is already kind of a lot. So the product gallery is there. If someone emails me or I email them, they'll see the product link in the bottom of my signature, but they won't necessarily see it just by going to the website.
That's very interesting. That's what I heard about portfolios from, let's say, guys from Wonderful Machine. Too many different specialities is not a good thing many times. So sometimes photographers even do different websites, right? If they want to do architecture and product, they don't put it in one website. Okay, we are done. Let's see. Okay, let's say this is the last question. Now, I have one more, the very last one, but this is we're gonna answer it and we jump to last one and we're done. Okay. So, from food lovers, as a photographer, do you bring along food prop like cutlery, surface board? Sorry. Other things, style. Okay, so do you bring your own, like, I don't know, food boards, knives, and all this stuff? Probably not.
No,
in the restaurant.
I only bring certain small things. I usually bring a few linens. There's a trick I picked up from another food photographer. She brings like it looks like a white napkin, but it's actually a handkerchief, and it looks better than the white napkins that they use for actual napkins. And I usually bring, sometimes I bring some boards that can look like a table because they look better than most tables that I run into. So it just looks like pretty generic wood. Sometimes I'll bring that along if the table surfaces they have are kind of boring or they don't have enough different, variety. I'll bring that. But as far as cutlery and glassware and silverware, I don't bring any of that. I just rely on the restaurants. If you had a big commercial shoot, they would probably have a props person that would take care of that.
Okay. Rob, we have, I missed a few questions. Let's try to answer it really short because I don't want to keep it for hours. How do you plan your shots? Food stylist help, art directors, chief suggestions, or simply your ideas? In short, how do you plan the shots?
Yeah, so I mean, if it's a more commercial shoot like that, the art director is first, right? They'll have a shot list. Usually start with a shot list, and we'll look at that and say, okay, that starts out really vague. Usually it starts out like, spaghetti and meatballs, duck à l'orange, whatever each dish is as you go down, and they won't have exact angles or anything charted out. And so I'll be kind of thinking about the angles and the lighting and stuff like that. A food stylist is going to be thinking in advance too. So you'll want to make sure at the beginning of a shoot like this, we did one for one of the cruise companies out here where we had the art director, myself, and the food stylist all on set the day of the shoot. So the shot list went out to everybody like a couple weeks ahead of time. The chef told us exactly what he was going to make. The food stylist made plans to, okay, this one's going to need some fake ice cream or whatever. She kind of plans what all the stuff she's going to bring to it, how she's going to style it. And then, I start thinking about lighting and stuff like that. And then the art director has his plan, which is we need one vertical, one horizontal or whatever. So it's a team effort when you're working with people like that. But truthfully, a lot of it happens right on set because there's nothing like seeing it through the lens. Once you put the camera up to your face, everything can really change. So I like to just get on set, and then I'll have a lot of ideas in my mind by the time I get there, but a lot of it just happens right there. Once you see it through that 100 millimeters or that 70 millimeters, then things can change radically. And a lot of times it's the thing that you thought of right on the day of the job that comes out the best anyway.
Right. And I don't know, with food, it's not as with photography, this product photography, when you know exactly what you're going to be shooting. I don't know, it's more like a question. Because sometimes, do you always know how exactly the dish will look like? Or it's like, just the name of it, let's say pasta with something, and then they bring it and you saying, wow, okay, I'm going to work with it.
A lot of times I just know the name of it. And so exactly. I can picture it, but I don't know exactly what it is. And then sometimes I'll tell them to send me a cell phone photo of it or something so that I could see at least, how they do it. And then I can think of different ways like, oh, I want to put the asparagus up here instead of on the side or whatever to make it look cooler. So, and then the food stylist, I find they change a lot. They'll change from the way the chef would plate it, the way the food stylist will plate it is just a lot different sometimes. So, but if you can get a snapshot ahead of time, like if you're doing architectural photography, for example, that would be another time where you just say, hey, can you send me a snapshot of that room with your cell phone? And then I can start visualizing how I'm going to light that room. And I've had some art directors who were super specific. We had one for a chocolate company recently that the agency sent us actual sketches of the photos, how they wanted them with the liquid dripping and all the stuff charted out, exactly how they wanted it. So we really knew exactly what look they were going for. But a lot of times it's just getting on set and then saying, seeing what looks good to you through the lens.
Yeah, I would say in my experience, same thing with the agency. They usually knows much more precise the final look, what they're looking for, comparing to just, let's say, a business owner. They usually have some idea and need the photos, and you kind of decide in many things on the side. Agree. Okay, Rob, it was great. I have a very last question before saying goodbye to everyone. What would be your suggestion? What would be your words of wisdom for those who starting to enter in commercial photography business? Maybe not food or food, whatever. What is your, words of wisdom?
I think number one is practice a lot. And number two is get some help. When I was starting, I was kind of shy. I didn't ask a lot of questions, but I had access to a lot of good photographers who were making a living at it and making great shots already. So I forced myself to not be shy and go out and ask them a lot of questions And some of them were a little more secretive, and some of them were really, really brutally honest. And some of them gave me really harsh critiques, and all this stuff really helped me in the beginning with developing not only my work, but also finding out, hey, what do you charge for a product shot? I have no idea. So ask a lot of questions, find some help, not just other photographers' help, but you can also, find some local food stylists and just set up an interview with them. Just say, hey, I'd like to talk to you for an hour over coffee. Or just, collaborate, just like you would for a fashion shoot. You look for models in your neighborhood to shoot when you're practicing. Don't just make spaghetti in your basement. Find a local chef who might need a couple images, and then you have a way better dish that you couldn't make on your own. You have a picture of this that you can use, or find a local, someone that makes the product that you want to shoot, and just, reach out for help. Don't be the lone artist making pictures in Google, studio. It's easy to get isolated in commercial photography, so reach out and get some help.
Agree. Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, communicate, help. That's what I was missing a lot too at the beginning. Yeah. I would say I was doing everything on my own, just dig into the basement and inventing my bicycle many times. Then I figure out, well, this is how it is when I start talking to people. Okay, awesome, Rob. Thank you so much. It was great, full of insights, and I see how many thank you have been posted on chat. So our viewers really enjoyed it. Thank you, and thank you everyone who was watching us, who was participating on the chat. And like I said, course from Rob Andrew is coming I would say in 7 days. So watch for it, and then you will have an access to Rob's private group once you join the course, and that's where you can ask even, way more questions than you ask it here, and get an answer, and it will be kind of private. I think we're done.
All right, thank you. It's fun.
Alrighty. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye, Rob.